Welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to practice using the Align tool. Now let's take a look at this real quick just so that you can see the options that it provides. You can align objects to left edges, to the center, horizontally and also vertically, right edge, top, and bottom. This line allows you to distribute things evenly, distribute amongst the top edges, the bottom, center, etc. When you're aligning objects in any program, you need to make sure that you are using this Align To drop-down menu in order to have control over what you're anchoring to or your key object, be it the margins, the page, the spread, or selection. These allow you to distribute the spacing between multiple objects. So for example, if I hold down the Option key on my keyboard, you're going to see that the cursor changes, right? And so I'm just going to click and drag. And I don't want to drag it in any sort of alignment. I just want to drag a couple examples here so that you can see how this works. I'm going to click and drag over all three. And right now we're selected, selected to align to a selection. So if I wanted to say align all of these in the center of this overall selection, they're all going to move. And I'm going to hit this vertical centers, and there it goes. So it's moved all of them so that they're all aligned to a vertical center. If I wanted to align them to a horizontal center, it's going to slide all of these into the center of the grouping, like that. Now, if I wanted to distribute them evenly, let's look at if I distributed them across the page. So it basically says this is the selection, so this bounding box is the beginning, and this bounding box is the end, and the one in the middle is now aligned evenly in between the two. You also can use this tool to align with a specific amount of spacing. And I use this function with the Align tool the most without question. What I've done is all three items are selected. I've clicked on an additional item here. So it's already been selected once, but I clicked back on it again without holding anything on the keyboard, and it has made the outline of that bounding box a bolder, thicker line of blue. It lets you know that that is the key object that you've selected. Once you have a key object selected, you can look here and see that it says Align to Key Object. You also will see this field become white rather than being grayed out. And what this does is allows you to use measurements, increments of a 1/16 of an inch, to control how far apart these items are. So maybe I want them to be, we'll say, 1/2 an inch away from this, and it's going to distribute them evenly so that there is a 1/2 an inch gap in between each of the bounding boxes. Perhaps I want them to be, let's try it, -1/4 inch away from each other in a vertical distribution. So this is an interesting thing to use, and this you can see that it's allowing some overlap because we've gone into the negative. Let's do something a little bit more extreme so you can see a good example of this. It's going to create some overlap here, but in a very controlled manner so that it's an exact placement. So what we're going to show you in this tutorial is if we take this word invite, we can replicate this exact look just by using one word in a bounding box and repeating the bounding box using the Align tool. So the easiest way to do that is highlight a word, Command C on your keyboard, create a new text box by clicking and dragging. And now what I want to do is hover my cursor over one of these corners and double click. Whoops, we got a return in there. We're going to double click, and that is going to close the bounding box up to the text that is in the text box. Now, if you the reason I knew that there was a return there is because I know that when you double click, it closes to the text box itself. But if you're getting stuck and you're not sure, you forget, something you can do is to go up here to your menu bar and under the type menu, go down and show hidden characters. And that's going to show you that when I copied this line, I copied over the return at the end. And so the end of the bounding box actually was after the return. So I'm just going to delete that. Now I know that there's no more text after, that's the pound sign. There's no more text after that pound sign, so I can close up the bounding box. Now, simultaneously, I'm going to do this again. I just held down the Option key to repeat, and I'm going to make the bounding box a little wonky, so it's not in direct alignment with the actual word invite. I'm going to show you why when you're doing things with the align tool you want to have a pretty tight bounding box. So for this I'm going to hide the hidden characters for now just so you can really focus in on what we're doing on screen. I'm going to take both of these and I'm going to highlight the bounding box that I want to align it to. So I'm going to make that the anchor. And I want to just align both of them to the top edge. Now, I'm going to click and drag. So I'm holding down the Option key and I'm holding down the Shift key. And what that does is when I'm holding down the Shift key, it keeps everything in alignment so that I can make sure that the invite that I'm copying is going in the same line. So it allows you to go vertically or horizontally. If I didn't do that, it would be really easy. It's harder to keep things in exact alignment. So again, hold Option and Shift when you're wanting to copy something and keep it in either horizontal or vertical alignment with the object that you're copying, the anchor object. Okay, so let's go. We're just going to copy these a few times to make sure we have exactly enough. And do that again over here. Perfect. Okay, so our 3 bounding boxes are aligned at the top. If I was to highlight just this row, and I wanted to, if I just hit distribute spacing, it's going to distribute it based on this align to selection, which is not going to yield the result that we want. It is going to evenly space these out, but it's not going to replicate the effect that we have in this first bounding box. You could go through the ridiculous process of trying to figure out the spacing, the exact spacing in between each character, or in between the lines, like what your letting provided, and you could just go in and kind of play. This gets you pretty close. It's still not close enough, so then you could go in and let's really refine it and get down to if we did 0.03 perhaps and align that spacing, and that's too much. But that is a very time consuming way to go about this. So instead you could just take your bottom word invite and highlight this the large box, the key object that we're trying to align to again. Click one more time on your key object and align that invite to the very bottom. So now our top and our bottom are perfectly aligned. And I'm going to select this whole row again, click and drag, and if I distribute them evenly, now you can see that I've completely replicated this look over here by using the align tool and bounding boxes. Now let me show you. I'm just going to replicate that real quick again on this side. If I'm lining this word invite to the bottom here, because we saw that that worked well, and then I'm highlighting all of these, I want to make sure that they're in alignment because I didn't use the Shift key to align them all consistently. So I'm going to make that the key object for now, so that they can all be aligned. I clicked over here, they're aligned to the left edge. And I don't want to dictate a spacing. I want them in the same way that I did over here to align. And so I can just click that box again. It doesn't deselect the entire unit. It just removes the key object. Now I'm going to do the same thing and say distribute spacing, but as you can see, because the bounding box is a different size, it's not going to work in the same way. So when you are using the align tool, you really want to close in your bounding box around your object to make sure that you are getting it exactly where you want it to be, albeit anchored to a large bounding box like the example that we showed here, or if you want specific spacing, you would want to make sure that you're in control in that way as well. Another thing that I wanted to point out, and this is just a design note, is when we're looking at this graphic, there's a couple things that really annoy me. There's this odd white space here that you can see that's getting cut off, or there's like a little triangle that doesn't seem meaningful. So if I'm pressing W, I can see where the crop marks would be, and I want to just erase anything that would be distracting to the eye, and for me, that little white space is distracting. So I can just move everything up a little bit. It also provides a little bit more space down here under the E, which feels a little bit better, and then there's not any odd moments where it's cropping but leaving odd holes that would be a distraction. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and I will see you back here for a tutorial on paragraph styles.